Good morning, good afternoon, good evening everybody, wherever you are. My name is Kevin May. I'm the editor and co-founder of Tnooz.com. Welcome to another one of our webinars. This occasion produced, we're glad to say, once again in conjunction with Datalex. And we've decided to do things a little bit different this time. So what we're doing is looking at the traveller experience, as you can see there on your slides, bridging the divide between merchandising and loyalty. So I'm joined today by Quinn, who's my co-founder, and he's the CEO of Tnooz, and he sits in the background as our producer, a very glamorous producer that he is, and he'll be joining us for the discussion as well. So what we wanted to do was, as I said, in conjunction with Datalex, is kind of explore this a little bit more. You know, the airline merchandising and loyalty share, they have a common objective really to kind of maximize profitability by delivering branded travel engagement and experience for airlines. Critical to this is a comprehensive and centric view. Everyone wants the ownership of the traveller across all business functions, whether that's loyalty, pricing, merchandising, technology, etc., etc. Now, but without this concentric view, the airline cannot really effectively manage the brand and master the engagement across the travel experience, arguably. So what we wanted to do then was explore a couple of themes and issues. So how does an airline need to adapt its organisation, if it has to at all, or indeed its systems and processes, to bridge these perceived divides, if they do exist. Many people do think they exist. So also is the next generation of merchandising, which effectively enables airlines to retain and grow loyal customers, they hope, develop non-loyal customers, and hopefully convert 100% into its customer base. What we've decided to do, as I said, is that normally for our webinars we have a series of presentations and then a Q&A at the end, but we've turned everything on its head this time. Instead, we're going to have a debate. So over the next 50 minutes or so, we have assembled an illustrious panel of luminaries, dare I say it, who are going to debate four of these topic areas with us today. As always with these webinars, we are recording the entire thing, so please do not worry at all if you get cut off or if you have to dip out at any point. What we hope to do is work on the video over the course of the next few hours once the webinar is finished, and we usually aim to have the entire recording up on Tnooz.com within 6 or 7 hours or so just watch out for that. So first of all, our panelists then, joining us today are, in no particular order, they're all great people, Marshall Wilmot, who is the Vice President Product and Distribution at WestJet. He's in Calgary today in Canada. Ronan Fitzpatrick, who's the Director Network Distribution at Lingus. He's in Dublin in Ireland. We have Michael Smith, who's the Managing Partner of Airline Information. He's in Glasgow in Scotland. We have Jay Sorensen from the IdeaWorks company, where he's the President Product Partnership and Marketing Practice. He's on the line today from Milwaukee. And we have Padraig O'Neill, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Datalex, and he is also in Dublin. So like I said, I'm Kevin May, and we also have Quinn on the call. So what you need to do if you want to ask a question at any point at all over the next 50 minutes or so is there is on your dashboard on the right hand side of your screen, here's a little function there that says questions. You just open that up and you can send questions into me or into us even, and we'll try and get those interspersed at any point during the webinar. We normally save these to the end, but because it's a different type of show, we thought we would just throw questions in as and when something brainy comes into your mind and you want to maybe quiz our panel or not, so, or just make a point. All opinions are valid, so please feel free to chime in at any time you like. So also throughout the webinar, we're going to kind of set the scene for some of the topics ahead by, as always, throwing open a poll to the audience. So our first poll today, as you can see coming up on the screen shortly, is your loyalty to an airline brand is most influenced by one of these three. So breadth of travel products and services available, just get your heads around that one for a second, loyalty program rewards, or the travel experience. So what is your loyalty? The poll is about to come up on your screen right now, if you can throw that up. So there you have three choices, everybody. Those votes are starting to come in now. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll just give that a few more moments to let everybody chime in. And I think, Jean, if you can throw the results up there. So just over half of you, 51%, say loyalty to an airline brand is most influenced at the moment by the travel experience, search, shopping and travel. 36% say it's because of loyalty program rewards. And just 13% of you say it's because of the breadth of travel products and services available. So thank you very much. If you can close the screen down now. And let's move on to the first topic area, please. So, the divide between online merchandising and loyalty programs. So we're going to kind of explore now, is there a lack of collaboration? Does it limit the opportunity? And let's kind of really dive in a little bit around these systems and organisation and culture. And what we thought to kind of kick us off here would be to turn first of all to Padraig O'Neill at Datalex to kind of give us a bit of an overview, and then we'll dive in with some questions and debates. So Padraig, good afternoon from the UK over to Dublin and Ireland. Hope you're well, sir.
Very well, thank you very much. And thank you all for your time today, and looking forward to some good engaged discussion around this area. I suppose maybe to kick us off then, focus a little bit, I suppose, in terms of the conversations that we find ourselves in Datalex, that is, right? So I suppose what we're finding out there in talking to airlines, that there's an increasing level of appetite to change and reinvent in the space. But definitely, I think in terms of this question, people struggle with what they have today, about what to do with their existing systems, propositions, processes, and ultimately the liability that they actually have on their books around this. So it's nearly the conversations you find yourself in are more about, if we had a green field, what would we do? It's nearly that nirvana type conversation. And then people maybe tend to retreat a little bit back into their areas again and deal with the reality of what they actually have today. So I think the appetite is there. I think even if you're looking at the poll we just did, the majority of people said that they were actually interested in more the online shopping experience. So there is a feeling out there, and I suppose there is a reality out there that maybe what we have doesn't make the most of the online conversations that actually exist out there today and the online opportunity. Because if you think about it, even the amount of people that the loyalty programs tends to address is probably somewhere between 10 to 15, maybe 20% of the actual loyal customer base. And generally, somebody being a loyal customer means that they're a record somewhere on a loyalty system rather than necessarily whether they're actually loyal or not. And definitely, I suppose you see in a lot of airlines out there that there is a very significant siloed effect between, I suppose, the group that look after the actual loyalty program and the group that actually look after the online proposition. We do find more and more, though, that there is a merging of our desire to merge the shopping experiences, to integrate redemption, etc., throughout the actual existing shopping flow, and to try and make it simpler. And I think that's the ambition that everybody actually has out there, is to actually try and make the registration process simpler, to make the redemption process simpler, to make the identification of an individual simpler, to make the proposition simpler, and to make the actual accounting and management of the overall loyalty program simpler. And I think the onus is on us as systems providers and as airlines to actually be ambitious, in this area and see how we can actually reinvent. And I think I'm reluctant to use the word reinvent in some ways, because I think the answer isn't necessarily to throw out what you actually have today and what you've actually invested in, but it's maybe to actually encapsulate or embrace that and actually make that part of some sort of hybrid loyalty program that's actually out there, that actually leverages the existing investment that's actually there, and that you actually allow you to put layers on top of it to actually give next generation type rewards, etc. And even simple things like, I think the solutions that we actually have out there today are a legacy, and we need to question them, and we need to find ways to bridge what the legacy systems actually require versus what the online consumer experience needs. So simple things like how we identify people. Like people's email addresses are probably the best unique identifier that we actually have out there today. So really, do we need another identifier? Should we really be pushing people through a lengthy registration process when they're under time pressure to actually purchase? Should we not just use the information that we've already gleaned through the actual shopping and payment processes to actually populate the registration process so that it actually becomes seamless? So when you're entering your email address on the final payment page, why isn't it as simple as sort of saying, click here to register for our loyalty program and get some benefit, whatever that benefit we choose to actually offer at that point. We have all the other information gathered already. And to try and actually try and take some of that type of thinking into even how we look at this as an organization level, and within the actual, and question the actual cultures that we actually have in place today, to actually try and bring a more unified shopping experience and benefit experience to the actual consumers actually out there. And we as system providers don't make that easy either today. So I think we actually have to provide the ability to actually leverage the existing investments, making sure that people actually don't have to actually re-look at the whole accounting and liability that they actually carry within their actual organization, and that we find a way to actually encapsulate the whole proposition into a next generation loyalty proposition.
Okay.
Does that make sense for people? People like Marshall, Ronan, etc. Does that sort of hit where your thinking is at?
Yeah, it's Marshall here. I totally agree. I think the biggest challenges that we have right now is that we do have a lot of IT systems. We're not going to change our reservation systems. We've got core systems and functionality that's going to be there forever. What we need to do, though, is we need to be able to work with our internal IT, as well as outside service providers, to figure out a way to build a bit of a better front end that can actually allow the business to be more agile and have the ability to adjust their programs to fit with the needs of our guests.
Yeah, Ronan here. I'm in a little bit in agreement with Marshall. I think we've got a bit of a situation where loyalty programs grew up traditionally for airlines around a way to get rid of stressed or de-stressed inventory, and it's only over time they really moved into a situation where they're actually there to reward frequent flyers. So the combination of merchandising and loyalty, I think one of the things we need to do first of all is get one or other of them right. So we need to get merchandising right, and we need to get loyalty right, and then we need to see what's the perfect intersection of the two parts of the circle to give us a nice complete Venn. I think the classic case of systems, organization, and culture are, as mentioned on the slide, are key to the whole process. Can you have an organization where you'll have a split of what's loyalty versus what's reward versus what's benefit and recognition, and how we present those back to our guests, our travelers, our customers in a proposition that they can understand and is meaningful for them, not just a case of trying to reward those who fly with us most frequently with inventory that is inaccessible to them and we find very difficult to offer them.
Ronan, Kevin here. Just going back to the point you said, get the loyalty right and then get the merchandising right. Just very briefly, before we go to the rest of the panel, should one of those come before the other, or does it depend on the, I guess, the demographic of the customers, the legacy of the airline, or something like that?
I think it depends on a few different propositions. I think the airline itself has something to play. I mean, I think back to the days when we started off on our Lingus.com, and we had 0% online back in year 2000. We made all the mistakes that starting at that time we shouldn't have made. We looked at things and tried to force people to join our loyalty program before they could complete an online booking. That really doesn't make sense. Padraig talked about trying to make it easier for people. You need to make this as frictionless as possible and ease the administration. Our traveling population are sophisticated. They're not just going to buy anything you throw at them. It's a case of buying things that are relevant to them and that are of value to them at a time that's relevant to them. So I think that part of the merchandising and getting it right and understanding a customer at any of the touch points, that is an important part of the mix. Then we can see how we can use merchandising to live alongside the loyalty program.
Just before Jean wanted to chime with a point, but we have had a couple of questions in already. Thank you very much. I'm not quite sure who's best placed to answer this, but someone can jump in straight away. This is from Asman Ahmed. He asks, is there a peculiarity on behaviours of customers based on geographical differences or race in their affinity to loyalty programs or merchandising at all? Has anyone had any experience or any data to support that or not? I think it may be you, Jay.
Well, I'm chuckling because I remember reading Oh gosh, probably 15 years ago, a CEO of a major Europe-based airline who laughed at the development of frequent flyer programs in the United States. The CEO said, this is a sickness of America, that certainly our customers would never fall for this type of relationship or this type of offer. And I thought to myself, this man does not understand his customers, because, this is something that is universal, and that is the desire. Everyone likes something for free, and that is the universal promise of a frequent flyer program. And so I think that there certainly are regional differences, but I think they oftentimes are overstated. There are two things I know about customers all over the world. They like something free, and they want to get it for the lowest price. I'll go back to a more recent example in India, where before the LCCs began to develop in India, we had people say, we had Indian aviation experts saying the low-cost phenomenon will not work in India because Indians must have a meal with their flight. And I thought, that's just silly. It's going to be all about cost, and in the end, what we're seeing today is it is all about cost. So I think that there's two things that we need to drive as airline executives, and that is for a frequent flyer program, it's got to deliver something that is a tangible free benefit for the consumer, and as for the airline, it has to be about low fares are important to a lot of people.
Okay, thanks, Jay. We're getting lots of questions here, and I'm loath to move on until we've asked some of them. So, this is from Sarah Turner. She's from Holiday Extras, which I believe is in the UK. I'm going to turn to you for this one, Michael. She says, does the panel think that a loyalty program is necessary if you're largely dealing with customers who purchase your products and services once a year for their main holiday? Isn't it outstanding experience more valuable? Is more valued by customers than a formalised loyalty program? That's Sarah Turner, Holiday Extras. Michael, what do you think up there in Glasgow?
Yeah, I think actually that's a great question. And just to kind of echo something that Jay was saying there, I don't know whether that was the chief executive of British Airways that was saying that it's your Americans and those frequent flyer programs that when I worked at British Airways, it was dragged kicking and screaming into setting up a frequent flyer program. It wasn't something that it wanted to do, and I think that is is a very interesting point to realise that it's about competitive pressure. So if you look at the UK market, both Ryanair and EasyJet don't have frequent flyer programs, whereas Spirit and Southwest in the US do, and that's largely driven by the competitive nature of the actual market. But to move on to Sarah's particular question, I think it's a very interesting example again from the UK, which is Monarch. And Monarch has for want of a better phrase, a frequent flyer program, but it's not something that it particularly shouts or pushes. And what it's using that to do is to engage with those people who might take a second trip, or who might be thinking of going on EasyJet rather than flying with Monarch again, and to try and get those people in and to be able to establish a dialogue with them, having that ability to communicate with them over and above just trying to sell them a seat is something that airlines can do very well. And I think just to pick up on a comment from earlier on, there is one airline that I'm certainly aware of that automatically enrolls people in Rewards for All, which is Flybe, just by providing their your email address when you actually book a flight. Now that certainly has some advantages in terms of making it frictionless, but it also has some disadvantages as well. But I hope, Sarah, that answers your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Now, a lot of this does kind of lead very nicely into our next topic, and those of you that have made a comment about the sound quality, we're going to look into that. So, if we can move on to the next poll, please, Jean. Right, everybody, how would you rate the airline shopping and reward experience compared to other online retail experiences? Poor, average, better than average, and excellent. And Jean, if you can throw the poll up there, that would be great. So.
Hi, it's Padraig here as well. I think if we have time, I think the first poll was really interesting. It might be interesting to maybe just dwell a little bit more on the response to this, because I think we're getting a good level of interaction there.
Yep.
If we have time.
Yeah, everyone's just voting now. Like I said, we're getting questions come in. Reminder to everybody that you can send in a question just by using the questions module on the dashboard on your right-hand side, just while we get these come in. So, compared to other online retail experiences, airline shopping and reward schemes, let's have some results up there, Gene, I think now. Just over half again, 52% say average. Unfortunately, a third of you say poor. Nobody says excellent. It's telling. And 18% say better than average. So let's throw up the next topic. Yes, of course.
On that one again, if you don't mind, sorry. So what's interesting again is that there's a high percentage saying that there's a shopping experience is really important, but that they actually are not big fans of what we actually have today. So it's interesting, the first two polls seem to tie very much more in terms of experience, much more than I would have thought so. The second poll obviously is more experience orientated, but the first poll sort of gave a very strong experience message as well, rather than more so nearly than proposition. It'd be interesting to see if anybody any thoughts on that. Or
yeah, okay. So let's move over to topic 2. So under the broad heading of ancillaries, redemptions and rewards, let's kind of, if we can, get into the meat of, how does this benefit an airline? We've kind of started covering that anyway. Are these indeed worthwhile benefits for the traveller? That kind of answers Sarah's question a little bit, or relates to that. And indeed, why don't more airlines do this? We've also kind of covered that as well. So we were going to ask you to kind of kick us off a little bit, Jay, on this one.
Well, I think this comes back to the whole silo discussion at the beginning of this online conference, and that is, why in the world do we have a situation in which airlines are selling ancillaries such as or a la carte items such as baggage, and really, with rare exceptions, are passengers or members of the programs earning any type of incremental miles or points for that charge activity, for that purchase activity. It's crazy, because here's a product that's being sold by the airline, and the airline should obviously understand how powerful a loyalty program is. Why are they not providing additional motivation by, and there are exceptions, Pegasus, for example, airlines, allows people to accrue points for online purchases that are in addition to the base fare, but boy, it's a really, they are the exception rather than the rule.
Does anyone?
An interesting.
Please go ahead, Michael.
Well, I was just going to say that a couple of things that Padraig was saying earlier on about needing to question legacy, and I think part of the reason for what Jay's just describing there is some of the legacy issues in our airlines, and it's not an IT one. Again, Padraig mentioned about the liability on the books, and with the new accounting rules for accounting for loyalty programs, the $4.5 billion that Delta, for example, has sitting as in quotes a liability on its books, that is actually deferred revenue. So if you've got your pricing for your mileage program correct, then it should be driving you to allow people to earn miles for purchasing items on board, earn miles for excess baggage and for other a la carte fees, because you're going to make money off the back of that. So Delta have $4.5 billion sitting on their accounts as deferred revenue. So the more they start to drive that on the redemption side, then they're going to start to realise that revenue. So of course you want to get people earning, because that then engages them in the loyalty part of your program, and hopefully will get them to fly with you more often. So the more opportunities you give them, especially for items like onboard food, especially if they're buying premium meals or other a la carte fees.
Yeah, it's Ronan here. I think Jay's point is well made, and I think some of it stems from the evolution of the product as well. it's taken us quite some time in the history of aviation to come up with a mechanism for offering reward seats and to have a reward program capable of purchasing seats from the airline's revenue managers. I think as ancillaries and merchandising and retail have grown in recent years, that growth hasn't matured yet, and I think there isn't really an agreed mechanism for how our loyalty program should purchase those ancillary revenue items from within the airline itself. So I think some of this will grow out over time, but I think there is a part of the process that says certainly it makes sense that my spend with the airline, once it's recorded in a transparent manner that I can easily understand, should be recognized. So there is certain complexities that will creep into the process when it comes to what ancillaries are part of the airline suite versus what are third-party ancillaries and how to divide them in a shopping basket, but I think they can all be addressed over time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I do feel that there is system limitations as to what we can do, and we need to build capabilities to actually make it seamless to our guests. But it all comes down to the economics, because if you are awarding, in our case, WestJet dollars or points or whatever for various ancillaries, you got to build the business case, because you are going to increase your liability over time, and you just got to make sure that the overall economics of the program continue to make sense by adding on more accrual and redemption opportunities.
But Marshall, I mean, it's a product offered by the airline, and so therefore it actually should take a priority in terms of the ability for someone to accrue a loyalty benefit for purchasing it.
I agree, but it's going to go back to the overall economics, and you got to build that into the value proposition to the guest that would cover off all of your offerings. But I do agree that it is the direction that should go, because as you unbundle and as you make more of the services that the airline sells as ancillaries, you need to take a look at the overall value proposition to the guest.
This Padraig here, sorry. I suppose, in my view, I suppose it's why wouldn't you do this? Why wouldn't you try and actually drive more, revenue opportunities where you can, so long as it isn't damaging the brand. And like obviously where customers are loyal already, then we actually should have a greater propensity to actually offer them things that are of value to them, because we know a lot more about them. And like that's the benefit of actually having people in the frequent flyer programs, etc., is that by actually having them in there and knowing and being able to identify them, our propensity to actually ultimately offer them a better service, but ultimately to make more margin out of them, is greater.
Okay, we've got
to follow on from Marshall's point. I think there still are areas where we have to recognise the systems that are in place. So the aspiration absolutely would be to recognise everybody at every touch point, know that they're a member of our loyalty program, and offer them the things that are relevant to them. But when you spread that out across geography and across different handlers and outstations, departure control systems versus reservation systems, etc., the nut becomes a bigger nut to crack. And I think that's why part of the process in the first instance should be, and the recognition from the poll seems to suggest also, is get your experience right in the booking process, and then translate it beyond that.
But I suppose, Ronan, if you have the two integrated, so in terms of the actual redemption and the normal shopping and touch points, that is a one experience, then it's the same process in some ways. It's accounted for differently in the back end, but you have the same opportunity and you have a greater propensity to sell if you can actually make it easy for people to actually access what they've actually accrued, etc.
Absolutely, no doubt. I think the key part of that is access to what they've already accrued, which is so it should be something that's bankable and that can be applied against your purchases. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got a question here from Chris Lapinto from Expert Fly. He says, makes a point here, even if you don't earn on ancillaries, why not allow travellers to use miles? After all miles aren't revenue until actually spent? Question mark, I believe.
Well, I'll jump in here because I've had conversations with airlines in which what I would call simple economics don't seem to be immediately apparent, and that is you're always better off spending $1 on something that you buy from your own company than spending $1 on buying something from outside the company. And that's purely a cash flow issue. And so I would concur that you are always better off spending money, quote unquote money or cash, on items produced by the airline. First off, the cost is the marginal cost is many times insignificant than going out as the alternative of going out and buying merchandise from retail merchandise such as blenders and toasters.
Okay, and before we move on to our third topic, here's a loaded question if anyone wants to answer it, and it's an opinion, I would say. Erin Shirit, I hope I've got your surname right there. Erin says, how come the GDSs don't support all of the new ancillaries? Who wants to answer that one?
It's Michael here. I'm quite happy to answer that one. I think it dates back to a thing that a couple of people have touched on, and a chunk of it is technology. With the exception of Amadeus, the other GDSs, technology is probably a little bit older than the newer stuff, because Amadeus is a much younger company. And I think that is part of it. Is that it's partly a technology issue. And it's partly, until relatively recently, the airlines have been focused on selling those a la carte fees and products through their own distribution channels, because that's been technically easier. Maybe Ronan can comment on his experience in that particular area.
Yeah, I agree. I think technology, certainly from the GDS perspective, has been slow to catch up with the ancillary revenue growth. But I also think one key aspect of it is really the GDSs don't have that customer relationship. So I think from an airline's perspective, and Padraig mentioned it earlier on, we might have a lot of information, we might have a lot of information that's passed to an airline as part of the shopping process. The question is what we do or what we choose to do with it. And I think from a GDS perspective, there isn't really that same relationship with the customer. And from an airline who has still a decent percentage of its sales through a GDS, it's difficult for us to establish a relationship with that customer who has booked through the GDS. So I think for us, if you're trying to divide your attention and trying to see where you're going to get your better return, you're going to focus on your direct customers first and try and make the experience for those direct customers as good as it can be. And that's the piece for us in terms of trying to know more about the customer and offer them something that's relevant, not just push an unordered list of a la carte items to them. Give them something that they think is of value. And I resisted touching the question early on about race or geography, but I think from the perspective of localization, I think there is definitely a localization element to it, because in that aspect of the transaction, I think where your brand is better known, people may have a better propensity to purchase an ancillary revenue product from you. So I think if you have established your credentials as being trustworthy and offering products that are relevant and that are of value to the customer, then certainly I think you'll get a better attachment rate on those products where your brand is better known. I think you may have different attachment rates across different geographies simply because of that fact.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ronan, and very brave of a legacy airline to give an opinion on that particular question. So thank you. We're absolutely whizzing through here. We're very conscious of the time. So
I'll just go back on that. Just go back on the legacy one there for a moment. Whilst we may have started with 0% in 2000, we managed to get as far as 83% online in 2009. So in the course of a decade, we turned it into essentially an e-commerce business, and I think it's that part of the process means we have a better opportunity to grow our ancillary and merchandising capability than some others.
Okay, and obviously congratulations. So let's start moving on now. So poll number 3, if available, what reward points or services would you redeem most often? We're getting to the subject of kind of like what's next in the next generation of this. So 3 options for everybody here. So air travel, travel ancillaries, or non-travel rewards. Let's see how everyone is voting here. I don't think this one is particularly going to surprise anybody. But what I'm going to do first is actually turn this back over to you, Padraig, and then you can kind of give your point of view, and obviously you can relate to some of the previous polls that we've had here. So if that's all right with you, Padraig, we'll get the results up now. Overwhelming, it would appear 71% would say they would like air travel. That certainly doesn't surprise me. 19% travel ancillaries, 11% non-travel rewards. So all those extra toys and fluffy things like that don't seem to be chiming with anybody. I mean, Padraig, kind of over to you on this one. I mean, first of all, does the results surprise you, and to refer back?
Yeah, I think the 3 polls sort of surprise me when you look at them all together, because it's basically saying that the core shopping experience for the, sure enough, for the prime products that people are actually purchasing is the key thing that's actually driving them. So it's back to, I suppose, time and price, being precious or whatever for people. But also, I suppose, we do see, I suppose, I'm surprised by the polls that there isn't more of a shift in terms of the actual what they can actually redeem. It's more about the actual core shopping and about ease, etc., around that, which does surprise me. But I suppose if we look at things like the travel ancillaries, like what we are seeing, and I suppose what every airline is seeing out there, is that other companies are making money out of the back of your customers. So they're actually being successful about it. So in terms of, if you look at the likes of Nectar and other people like that they have to be, reward programs out there that you secretly sort of admire, because they're actually proving the opportunity, because otherwise they wouldn't exist. So they're cannibalizing, the opportunity maybe that exists for yourselves in that. So I think it's been quite an interesting set of polls. I don't know whether anybody on the airline side is more informed than me or surprised by them.
Gene here, Padraig. Just quickly, remember we are talking to a primarily industry audience here, so we're not talking to we may be talking to the leisure side of their brain, but this is an industry audience. And secondly, in the traveling around that Kevin and I do, and just in the story coverage that we're involved in, there's an enormous interest in how to drive better merchandising skills and merchandising opportunities that a lot of companies are focused on. I mean, you hear it all the time in the catchphrase, big data. How can we use the data that we have? How can we use the systems and the partnerships that we have to create retention opportunities and acquisition opportunities that are different than the original frequent flyer programs that were used to do just that 10, 15 years ago? So without fully answering that question from the airline point of view or from our consultants' point of view, who are in the game more tightly than we are here, we are observing that there's a keen interest in what Datalex services are being provided. And I also would like to hear from the airline guys and from Jay and Michael about their interpretation of these results.
Well, I think Jay here. I think that the results here reflect, I think, value. It's interesting. You could almost put value to the 71% could equal 7 cents, 19% could equal $1.90, or a 19 cents, or in travel rewards could equal 11 cents. What I'm getting at is, the best value for frequent flyer rewards for an international carrier are typically the redemption associated with business travel, where you can get value of probably up to 8 cents a mile or more. And the lowest return is on things that the airline has to go out and buy, because the airline's not going to spend more than probably 0.6 of a penny for a mile. So I think this reflects an insider's knowledge of what value these different reward categories can deliver, with air travel being the best, and non-travel rewards, meaning stuff that the airline pays cash for, having the lowest value return per mile spent.
Ronan here. Gene, just to follow on for your point, I think if we look at the results of that slide, a certain amount of logic prevails again. I think, look at ancillary revenues and look at ancillary attachment of products from an airline perspective, and with the exception of baggage, find one with an attachment rate of higher than 19%. So I think absolutely the thing that customers are going to value the most will be the air travel itself. So give me a free seat and I'll decide what products I want to bundle with it myself. Thank you very much. I think in relation to the question on big data, I think what we have to get better at using from an airline perspective is, let's use the small data first. You've told us quite a bit in your shopping search. You told us whether you're traveling on your own, whether you're on a same-day return, whether you're traveling with your family or your kids, whatever. So let's try and use that information as part that you've given us as part of the search. Never mind the profile and history that you've built up with us over time, and through a combination of both of those, ultimately we'll be able to give you an offer that's more relevant to you. Then we'll be able to tie that again back to loyalty and have the perfect intersection.
It's Michael here. I think that's very interesting. Before I worked for British Airways, I worked for a mail order company, and one of the things that we found there, and we ran catalogues for lots of people for things like Green Shield stamps and other reward programs many years ago. And one of the things that we learned there is that it's not necessarily how many people redeem for those non-travel rewards or for those low-value items. It's that it makes people think, I can achieve that. They might not actually, return their miles in for a free toaster, but it's the bit that, yes, this is now an accessible program that actually engages them. So that it's about having it rounded. The fact that most people will probably redeem for flight is almost secondary to the whole bit. That's all about understanding the whole traveller experience. And I think Ronan was right about understanding some of those small bits of data. There is no point in trying to sell trip insurance for someone doing a domestic trip, say from Glasgow to London, but there is certainly a good case for selling trip insurance to someone going from the UK to Orlando on holiday with their family. So those are very simple bits of information that customers give us all the time.
Okay, so interestingly, we've had a couple of questions that have come in over the course of the last 35 minutes or so that are exactly on this next topic, which we're going to move to now, because when we were having our pre-discussions over the last week or so, we had a feeling that this one would probably deserve an entire webinar in itself. So let's have the poll question first of all. Jean, if you could throw that up there, please. Okay, would you prefer to earn miles or money? Miles, money, don't care. It's a very quick one that we can go through that. Okay, let's have the results up on that one, Jean. Not a huge surprise, really. Everyone wants money. 62%. Want money, a quarter want miles, 12% really don't care. So they're easily pleased, clearly. So if we can move on to the final topic, and you'll see that come up on your screen. So social loyalty. As I said, we've had a couple of questions come in around this. And Michael, you were going to lead off on this one. Social loyalty, what is the value of social loyalty? Just give us a broad kind of overview of what is social loyalty, first of all, as well, please, Michael.
Yeah, I think one of the whole points about this particular webinar is this focus on the traveller experience. And I think we have to understand what do we actually think people are loyal to. Are they loyal to the frequent flyer program and its currency? Are they loyal to the airline, or are they loyal to the likes of Facebook, or Twitter? So I think that there's an interesting bit there about what people are loyal to, and I think the bit where, in my opinion, things are moving to is that people are probably a little bit more loyal to the likes of Facebook and their friends on Facebook than, and I mean their social friends, I don't necessarily mean corporate or companies. And I think it is interesting if you look at what's been happening in the social loyalty online. Delta have been selling flights through their Facebook channel, but it's not something that I think that they're making a fortune out of. Now the question is that just because it hasn't taken off, or because people don't want to be part of it? Is it a sales channel, or is it just a way for people to be able to engage with customers? And throwing in the little caveat that poor British Airways retweeted, for those of you outside the UK, someone posted something fairly offensive, and BA accidentally then retweeted that. So you have to be careful with some of these social media channels as well as using it for greater loyalty and brand advocacy.
Okay, I mean, Padraig, you're very passionate about this next gen. I mean, some would argue that the next generation of loyalty and merchandising does actually link into social loyalty. I mean, is there any specific things that you want to mention on the next gen side of things that perhaps ties into the social loyalty element of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree. I think next gen and social are sort of in the same sort of era of thinking anyway, at least around it. I think it'd be worthwhile actually going to our colleagues from WestJet to actually talk about what they see as the next gen proposition. It'd be a lot more interesting, I think, to actually get feedback directly from Marshall and then maybe from myself. If that's okay,
yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk a little bit about it, because your next gen is our reality today, because our frequent flyer program, or our loyalty program, is relatively new. We're only about a little over 2 years old, and when we designed it, we had to design something that kind of fit with our brand. And not sure how much people know about WestJet, but we're a fairly young airline. We're only 16 years old. We come with low-cost routes, largely leisure-focused, but kind of evolving ourselves to the business traveler. We do about $3 billion in revenue a year. So we kind of looked at where we're going as an airline and tried to make sure that we were designing a loyalty program that fit with our brand. And really what we wanted to do is we wanted to build something that was simple, something that provided real value to our guests and not necessarily perceived value. We wanted it to be really simple, and therefore that's where we came out with WestJet Rewards. And the program is quite simple. It's based on earning based on your spend, both on the airline as well as on WestJet vacations. So you earn based on percentages of your spend. And then the beauty of it is the redemption side from our perspective, because really what you're earning is you're earning WestJet dollars. So it makes it really simple. So when you go to redeem, you know how many dollars you have. You can apply those dollars to up to as low as a minimum of $25 towards your ticket, up to the full price. So we've eliminated any restrictions around blackouts, any requirements there at all. It's just like a form of payment. So it is like cash. So I was pretty happy to see that earlier screen that said that everybody liked money. So thank you for that.
So from my side, I suppose I think WestJet is a really interesting example of where they managed to rethink the actual proposition that's out there and to simplify it. And I think, to me, that's what the next generation loyalty actually means, is about actually trying to simplify the overall experience, and both for the airline and for the consumer, right? And to actually make it more accessible and more relevant maybe to today's world. And I know Ronan and other people are probably thinking about that as well, with their Lingus, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think Marshall's point is well made. I think the key part of it is something that's simple and something that's transparent. I think it takes away a lot of the drudgery that exists in some of the existing systems. As I mentioned earlier, why make it so difficult to offer seats to your most frequent flyers by having blackout periods, close off dates, etc., etc. So if it's money, it's no different to it being a electronic voucher from that perspective. So they can apply it against the total cost of the purchase and away to go. And it's clean, it's transparent, and it's easy for everyone to understand. I think the key point is transparency, and then Michael mentioned it earlier on that you've got a way that you can offer some engagement for people and say that okay, my flight might be a stretch too far, but what about something else out there that I can still get rid of my points of? So whether it's a way of reducing liability in the program or a way of offering real value to the customer, I think the customer can decide that ultimately. But people like WestJet and people like JetBlue, who you can get your favorite magazine subscription with your frequent flyer points. There are good ways of ensuring you've got engagement at the lower tier levels, and also making sure that you don't carry around a massive liability with you.
What's interesting for me anyway, and I'm be interested in other people's views, is whether the notion of trying to transition from a traditional legacy system, legacy loyalty system in terms of accounting, etc., to something like that, is that just something that you couldn't see the majority of airlines jumping through? That the benefits, you can understand simplicity, and if you're doing it today from scratch, you'd absolutely probably look at doing it that way. But for other airlines, is it just seen like a mountain to climb? Has anybody any views on that?
I think there's a few different parts to that conundrum, Padraig. You've got where there's more and more mergers happening within the airline industry as well. You've got the piece of, okay, how do we arrive at a program that can coalesce with our airline partners, and I might decide to do this way myself, but how do I make sure I can offer a means of redeeming points or having partner airlines redeem points on my program? So I think, yeah, there are a number of different problems in the mix, but I think certainly the easier way to do it is, if it is something that, whether it ends up as a currency or ends up as points, as long as it's clear and transparent to the customer and they've got an easy, ready reckoner, I think and a way to redeem them, then I think it's to the benefit of everybody.
Just on this kind of next gen and kind of looking forward. I mean, interesting question, and Stan Ovrovic asked this, and he kind of repeats what another two other questions that came in on this topic, and it's around. Excuse me. Yeah, how do you see the redemption of loyalty points in the context of alliances or partner airlines? Indeed, as alliances arguably get stronger, more powerful, and does that kind of enhance the loyalty schemes, or does it change them? How do they evolve as a result of those?
It's Marshall here. We've actually just embarked with our first alliance partner, one of our codeshare partners, American Airlines, where we have reciprocal accrual for American Advantage members as well as WestJet Rewards members, where our WestJet Rewards members can earn on flights operated by American Airlines and vice versa. And it is one of the bigger challenges I think that you face is when you're trying to do a relationship with a mileage-based program versus a revenue-based, because quite frankly we don't have access to the revenue information from American Airlines. So you have to do a bit of a hybrid when you go into those alliance relationships, and you basically end up building proxies, and we do basically award X number of WestJet dollars on the American Airlines flights, because it's really, without having access to their revenue, it's pretty impossible for us to do that. But it doesn't mean you can't do it. You just have to do it a little bit differently. Our guests are okay with it because it's something more that they can get, and it's a greater opportunity and utility for them to earn more WestJet dollars.
I want to throw a little bit of cold water on the direct accrual method. I think that Southwest has a very interesting alternative, and that is you accrue on Southwest, you accrue points, and the points you accrue are more or less tied to your spending. Then this points acts as a bit of a transmission in terms of you can convert the points into actual dollars, more or less, to spend for airfare, or you can convert the points to something else. I think I'm scared of the issue of transparency, and that is if you have someone who's earning dollars or pesos or whatever, those are very transparent, and while that may look like a very good thing for spending directly for airline travel, it becomes a very complicated thing for spending on other merchandise, and also for accrual. It really is difficult to have this work in a smooth manner for a partner accrual, for example, accruing at partners. points just seems to work as a better method. What you do with the points, of course, has to be very clear to the member.
I don't agree at all. I think, why create an extra translation? I mean, people understand what a dollar is. Why make it more complicated than you have to? We don't believe that you need to do that. I mean, there are obviously examples where that works, but again, it depends on your brand, and we just wanted to make it as transparent as possible. We feel that fits better with our guests.
Could I ask you a question about that as well? So do you find people less accepting then of things like dollars expiring? So like points can expire in some programs?
Well, our program, we have a 5-year expiry on WestJet dollars, but it's pretty easy to use them, right? And with no minimums and things, there's not a lot of inability to be able to use them. And we're not up to 5 years yet, so maybe we should have that discussion in 5 years.
I think it's Michael here. I think Marshall makes some interesting points about the brand, and and given that WestJet are up against a very large Air Canada that is offering a traditional model of miles based on flying distance, then that clearly gives you something that is different and helps you with fits nice into your brand and also against the competition. I think to Jay's point, I think what is interesting is when you get to some of the large traditional airlines that have got corporate deals where the traveller might not actually know how much is getting paid for that actual fare, which is back to you a little bit about you don't know how much American are charging. So that gets into some interesting difficulties about transparency. And I think what Jay was trying to suggest there was that is one way when you get to some of those corporate fares where you've got a real difficulty of allocating a clear, transparent value to them. That's one way of getting around it, to make it at least semi-transparent.
I think Ronan here again. I think I mentioned it earlier on. I don't think really whether it's translated into actual euros or dollars or whether it's left in points. I think once you've got a mechanism that's transparent and easy to see, so X amount of euro or dollar spend equals this amount of points. I think our customers are pretty sophisticated. Once you can give them the means by which they can calculate their spend into points or dollars accrued or euros accrued, then that's the transparency that I think I'd look for as a member of a program.
I'm working with a client, and the client has a difficulty in terms of they have a program that's like this, and they have an online catalog, and the member will have like 20, let's say $20 to spend, and they will compare the prices that's offered in the online catalog, and they'll say, hey, this product costs $30 in your catalog, and yet I know I can buy it at Walmart for $25. And so there's that's a case where the consumer is perceiving that the value is not there purely because they're comparing it dollar for dollar with other places where they can spend their dollars.
I again go back to what Ronan said. I don't think consumers are they're very capable of doing the calculations. I mean, we're just trying to take the mystery out of it. And I think that at the end of the day, if they want to know how much, convert their points or miles to a dollar value, they can do it fairly easily, right? So it's a philosophical difference.
Okay, so we're very conscious of everybody's time now. We've gone over the hour. We did have one final poll, which I think will lead quite nicely into what we'll do when we post the video later on, and it kind of relates to the social element. So, Jean, if you could do the final poll before we draw some conclusions here, and it just asks, how often have you had a positive social network engagement with an online brand? Often, sometimes, rarely, or never. If you could just quickly make your opinions heard there. Oh dear, I'm seeing those results come in now, and it's not looking good. Okay, and let's Let's throw those results up now, please, Gene. They did. They did equalise a little bit there. So 48%, nearly half, say they've never had a positive social network engagement with an airline brand. Lessons learned there, dear airlines. 26%, just over a quarter say rarely, 22% sometimes. What we will do is we'll capture that result there and we'll put a lead to this result on the video that we show later on, and people can chime in with their comments on that story. So because we didn't get to some of the social elements of the discussion here, so very conscious of everyone's times, as I said. So it only goes for me to say thank you very much to everybody for listening. We did have quite a few questions there. We'll save the questions that we didn't get a chance to pose to the panel and share them around, and hopefully someone will get back to you. In the meantime then, it's just for me to say thank you very much to Marshall Wilmot, Ronan Fitzpatrick, Michael Smith, Jay Sorensen, Padraig O'Neill, my co-producer here, Gene Quinn, and last of all, especially to Datalex for coming on board with us on this, and great discussion that we've had over the last couple of weeks trying to pull all this together. It's a really good discussion. Thanks ever so much for everybody for contributing, and we hope to have you listening in on a webinar in the future. As I said, the video to all this will be up in the next 6 or 7 hours or so. Thank you very much, Datalex. Thanks so much to the panel, and obviously thank you everybody for listening. Goodbye.